Greetings, friends, and welcome back to the Musings from the Mount podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Carenza. In this concluding episode of our three-part series on service, we explore the vital quality of adaptability in spiritual work. As our world accelerates through unprecedented change, we examine how true service requires both steadfast commitment and fluid responsiveness. And we draw from the Ageless Wisdom teachings, where we discuss why service isn't about rigid theories or personal recognition, but rather about our capacity to adapt and respond to life's ever-changing needs while maintaining our inner alignment. We hope you enjoy the episode. If you do enjoy this podcast, please consider going to meditationmountain.org and donating. Your donation helps us to bring you this podcast, as well as all the other programs that Mount produces, both today and in the future. We are incredibly grateful and honored by your support. Okay, back to the podcast. So we are back for part 3 of service. As we explore this more, we were really finding more and more things to unpack, and I think we're having reviewing this material and seeing it in a new light. And we discussed even right before we started just making it applicable to the here and now. And sometimes that's updating the language. Sometimes that is discussing things in new kind of ways. But one thing that remains, and is probably the story of probably the 18th century on, is adaptability. Yeah. So we left off, we were going through the different methods. And so the more adaptable you are, the more you can thrive, survive, and flourish, because adaptability is the key. And we're seeing that now. And I think a lot of people probably are a little freaked out about how fast things are happening. And so adaptability is going to be the key across all sectors, forms of life, different jobs. We're going to see a lot of upheaval. But, I say don't fret, because the most important thing stays the same, is love and compassion. But in that sense, in the sense of service, the next thing that we were going to cover is adaptability.
Right.
And I'm just going to kick it over to you, and we'll just go pick it up where we left off. Maybe we, just see what happens.
Well, as you were speaking, I had some images come to mind around adaptability. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking that the Aquarian age that we're moving into is one of more go with the flow. It's fluid readjustment, reorganization, fluid dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you think of an LCD screen that we use for our smartphones and our computers, that is always changing. It's adaptable. It's the most adaptable thing, because every millisecond it's portraying something new, because it's being given an impulse to carry out. And it's not stuck in an old image. Whereas the Piscean age, with devotion, which is a wonderful way of being deeply aligned with purpose and loving intent, it can tend to get stuck in a fixed idea of what is and not be fluid. So I've used this image before of the new age, the age we're in now of adaptability, is one of liquid crystal, where things don't get crystallized, but they crystallize sufficiently to be coherent, to hold a form. So liquid crystal is just like your LCD screen. You and I are able to respond in the moment, in the best way possible, to portray accurately the impulse that we're picking up. So for me, adaptability, if I translate it into, if you like, digital terms, they didn't have the LCD screen when the Tibetan wrote this, when Alice Bailey recorded these words. And that's why I think we've got a new understanding of what it means to go with the flow. It doesn't mean, you just do whatever you want. It means you are able to let go of something from before and create something new that is still, as you say, in touch with that which never goes away, which is the inner truth, the inner power of love. But how to present that in an ever expanding and an emerging way, an evolutionary way, that's the blessing of moving into this age of Aquarius. It does give us the added bonus of being more liquid in how we respond and not fixed.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just, as you were speaking, I just thought of those images.
Yeah, and we know Bruce Lee, be like water. Yeah.
Be like water. Yeah. So let's pick up, as you say, where we left off. We were talking about the different methods. And so we're going to read a paragraph and then we make some comments, we unpack it. It may call forth some memories, anecdotes. So this is what the Tibetan master writes. A further method of service shows itself in adaptability. This involves a readiness to retire when other or more important people are sent to fill the niche we may be occupying, or inversely, an ability to step out of office into work of a greater importance when some less competent worker can do his work with equal facility and good judgment. Now, that language may seem a little bit about, I'm the people who are better than, it just means somebody who has a greater capacity to do the work. You need to move into a greater area of responsibility. And if somebody is growing into the next stage of capacity and awareness and responsibility, it may be that they need to take over the function that you're performing in the ecosystem. So it's not about a career and where you are in the management chain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not measured that way. It's measured by, if you can, you do.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've expanded your ability to do, you're invited to step into something larger. Because we've said before, the realm of the enlightened ones is not static.
Mm-hmm.
It's always, they're evolving. We talked about 100 years ago, 150 years ago, they lived on the higher mental plane as a group entity. Mm-hmm. And then they moved house because their frequency is such, they moved to the Buddhic plane. Mm-hmm. So it's always evolving. Masters are always evolving. Enlightened ones are always evolving because that is the nature of life. Mm-hmm. And when a master vacates a certain position, it leaves a space to be filled. That space to be filled is filled by whoever is ready. Whoever's ready in the fourth realm, humans. And that's why initiation is this, exquisite cosmic succession plan.
Mm. Yeah.
As well. It can be used as succession planning.
Yeah.
It's another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So when he says, if somebody comes along who's better than you, step aside. Well, it's in a way of just recognizing of divine economy says, right people in the right place doing the right thing at the right time, in the right way. Mm-hmm. And we all dance together. Well, you've got to find your place in the dance. And it evolves. It's an evolving dance. Yeah. I think that's the beauty of what we're picking up on now. It isn't like a fixed position. This is it. This is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. The call to service is a call to serve life. Mm-hmm. And then we go with the flow and we are moved to do more, to move somewhere else, to be with another group, to take on another assignment as we move from the inside. Mm-hmm. So life always happens from the inside out. So adaptability for me is this ability to have a flexible response to spirit in the moment, and it's not held back by what I think, what I believe I can't do, mm-hmm. and my closely held and dearly held limitations of self. I am a work in progress, and I progress by serving. Mm-hmm. So that was, I just felt compelled to say that because some of this language, because it was written 60, 70 years ago, because this is a compilation of different writings and the writings span, 60, 70, 80 years. So let's carry on. It is the part of wisdom in all who serve, neither to rate themselves too highly, nor to underrate themselves. So this goes back to the Tibetans' description of humility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I like this, and it's important
It's
to
a
hold
right.
that. Yeah.
It's a sense, an adjusted sense of right proportion.
Mm.
He calls humility. You don't aggrandize yourself. You don't belittle yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that sweet spot. It's what I call the sweet spot of sovereignty.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's an important trait to hold.
Yeah, yeah. Bad work results when the non-efficient fill a post. But it is equally a loss of time and power when skilled workers hold positions where their skill has not full scope and where less well-equipped people could do as well.
Mm-hmm.
Be ready, therefore, all ye who serve, to stay a lifetime in office, non-spectacular and seemingly unimportant, for such may be your destiny and the place you may best serve. But be equally ready to step on to work of more apparent value when the Master's word or when the soul's message goes forth, and when circumstances and not the service planning indicate that the time has come. Ponder on this last sentence. So why don't we do that? Let's
Mm-hmm.
repeat that. It's a long sentence,
Mm-hmm.
but it's basically saying you don't have to worry about what's next. Just be open, serve, and then you'll get the call because you're on call.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on call, you're going to get the call.
Yeah. Yeah, the language is particularly hard. And this is a kind of a tough like this passage is. It's kind of a cold splash of water in times.
Yes. So here we go. Be ready, therefore, all ye who serve, to stay a lifetime in office non-spectacular and seemingly unimportant, for such may be your destiny and the place you best may serve. But be equally ready to step onto work of more apparent value when the Master's word goes forth and when circumstances and not the server's planning indicate that the time has come.
Mm.
And this is this whole thing of in the professional world now, in the corporate world, it's you have a career and you measure your career not always by how effective you are and how much good you can do, but where you stand in the rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a CEO or are you a factory worker? Are you this? So you place yourself on this ladder of value.
Mm-hmm.
But he's basically saying that doesn't exist. You're a soul. You are placed in a position where you can both give and receive. You can learn and serve.
Mm-hmm.
So it's on the job training.
Yeah.
Service is on the job training, Joey.
Yeah.
So what do you get out of this last sentence? Because he says, ponder this last sentence. And when he says that, you know he wants you to take a real hard look at it.
Well, I mean, I have a little of a rebellion spirit. So, it's an interesting passage for me. I think it's really one of the more difficult ones, honestly, in all of the Alice Bailey stuff that I've read, because it does make you wonder if it's putting a bar up there to do the exact opposite. So it's sort of a saying, don't, just stay the course, don't do anything, and it's like, well, really? Or are they looking for the ones that buck the system?
Well, the way I read that is that if your soul has given you an assignment,
Mm-hmm.
that, hey, this is where you can be most useful and help the most,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not the most glamorous looking
Sure.
on the outside.
Yeah.
Tough. So what?
Yeah.
It's where your soul can best give and receive.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So what I see here is that don't judge yourself by whether you're out there on stage. If you're asked to be behind the scenes and work for a lifetime, do it. Because from the soul's perspective, there's no better or worse.
Right.
There's no status in position. It's not about position. It's about capacity to be of service.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a tough one because we're trained to, well, I want to, the spotlight's never on me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the spotlight may not be on you, but what your work is to put out good energy into the system.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that in an invisible way. And sometimes it's more effective when your name isn't in lights or when you're not a public figure, you can actually do more behind the scenes. There are certain masters that in Europe, several hundred years ago, did a lot of diplomacy work behind the scenes. They weren't always on stage because that's how you get things done. You make the connections, you make things happen. Then there are people on stage who act it out. And there are other times when you get somebody who's really enlightened, shows the way by being on stage. So I guess it's saying, don't judge, don't compare by what the assignment looks like measured by the current society's value system. Everything that you're asked to do as a soul in service is valuable, is useful.
That's right.
That takes us out of the competitive, because I've seen this tendency, I've seen it myself, that the whole spiritual service thing can be a little bit competitive. Who's the better server?
Sure.
Who's got more likes on their Facebook? Whose podcast gets the most? I mean, it's a tricky one, Joey.
It sure is, because you want to have the message to go as far as possible. That's the part of the broadcast is still cast widely, and you want it to reach as many people as possible. But at the same time, you need to do it without really thought of reaching.
Well, I remember I watched an interview with Sir Laurence Olivier, the actor, and somebody asked him, why do actors act? And he sort of smiled, and then he said, "What? From a personality point of view, it's look at me, look at me, look at me." But then you have the gift of portraying something. But he's basically saying that there's always that needing to be in the spotlight. But an actor needs to be in the spotlight to be seen, to be playing the role. But when your need is to be in the spotlight for your own self-gratification, it's a detriment. When you're in the spotlight, because it helps you in your service of transmitting whatever you've been asked to transmit, it's different. That's how I read part of what's in here.
Yeah.
So did you want to carry on a little?
Yeah, shall we? Because this next section is a good one, because this is important for everyone right now. Just and the kind of energy follows thought aligns with this next section.
Right. And this next section he's called the attitude following action. So when you serve, what's your attitude after you've completed your assignment?
Yeah.
So he asks a question, what should this attitude be? And then he gives one of his, utter dispassion, utter self-forgetfulness, and utter occupation with the next step to be taken. He's basically saying, hey, don't rest on your laurels. You can feel good about it, but it's like, you don't go around singing "We Are the Champions" for, a year.
Yeah, there's no victory laps. I mean, there really isn't. There's no podiums. No. There's no medal ceremonies.
As you said before, there's no Cooperstown. There's no Baseball Hall of Fame for World Service.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I kind of said it jokingly, but it really is service without a scoreboard.
I love that phrase, Joe. You came up with. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he doesn't mince words here. He's right into it.
Well, he uses utter.
Yeah.
I mean, utter means the ultimate.
Yeah.
And that's it. Utter dispassion, utter self-forgetfulness, and utter occupation with the next step to be taken. That doesn't mean you feel a certain sense of reward and joy at having accomplished something. But it's not a need to be seen to have done something.
It's also a form of energy management, because all the energy you're giving to that, you're not giving to the next task.
Right. So he's basically saying, once you've completed something, take a breath, and do what's next. Do what's next. Okay, so let's see what else he's got to say. And it's all very sort of, The perfect server is he who does to the utmost of his ability what he believes to be the soul's or the master's will, and the work to be done by him in cooperation with the with the plan, the divine plan. And we talked about the plan before. The plan isn't this sort of set of instructions you're handed. It is the strategic implementation of purpose. And the plan is, well, how are we going to get purpose anchored on earth through projects? As we said before, the way that life works, you have purpose, you have plan, and you have project.
Mm-hmm.
And we've said we on earth are the project workers. Those in the subtle realms, in the realm of souls, hold the plan. They hold, if you like, the architectural drawing. They've got the master schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yet it's also adaptable. It's adaptable because things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to change plans. You don't change your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You change how you're going to achieve your purpose.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you can't do that, you're lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that ties in well with adaptability too, especially when we see how fast things are moving now. If you even linger, you may have missed the next 6 things. I mean, the board treasurer, Brian Ziegler, and I have been very closely following the rise of the DeepSeek AI. And we can't, by the time I send him something, there's already 2 new things that have happened. So you have to be adaptable, and then you have to not attach to any plans you might have had, So
Well, if you have to be adaptable in the moment, then adaptability is a constant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be,
Which is why I'm saying it's liquid crystal.
That's right. I really like that analogy because that's something they couldn't even wrap their heads around, and now we don't think anything of it. Now it's like if you're not super adaptable, for instance, if your screen wasn't able to keep up, you would this is defaulty.
Well, this morning I was listening to my iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
I had it on a music channel, and then suddenly it was like an old LP got stuck. And it kept repeating every 2, and I went, this can't happen on a digital. It's supposed to be it's supposed to flow.
Yeah.
And there's something
That's
wrong
wild.
with the hardware. I couldn't even turn the phone off.
Huh. That is wild.
So
when things like that happen, little glitches in the matrix, where
it's a glitch in the matrix, but you realize that we are so reliant on the flow of life, on our technology accompanying us in this fluid movement.
Mm-hmm. We sure are.
And my smartphone froze.
Yeah.
So, gosh. So let's carry on.
Okay.
So this says, after you've done your work, then having done his part, he passes on to a continuance of the work and cares not for the result of his action.
Mm-hmm.
And the Buddhists did this as well. It's like when you've achieved something, you have gained a merit, but then you give your merits for the good of the whole.
Yeah, in the same way that they make a mandala, and then when it's finished, they look at it and then start over again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't linger on perfection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a good, that's something that it's hard to wrap our heads around, because is spiritual and sort of philosophic as we want to be about it. We all enjoy, I think, a little bit of the accolades that come with doing the things we do. I think it's part of human nature. But I think the more that you really sit with this, the more you literally ponder on this, you start to see that, oh yeah, in the same way that if a painter just sits and looks at his painting that they made, they don't paint again. So as soon as you paint, you have to get rid of it, sell it, give it away, and move on to the next blank canvas.
Moving on to the next blank canvas. That's a beautiful image because that's what it's about. You start anew, but what you bring with you is the wisdom and the skill that you've generated.
Yeah, absolutely.
From your past paintings.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, carrying on with the words of the Tibetan, he knows that wiser eyes than his see the end from the beginning. Now, that's a phrase he uses often. You see the end from the beginning. That's a certain wisdom that can hold time, space, past, present, and future in a different way. And you see the end from the beginning.
Yeah.
In fact, one of Rudolf Steiner's meditations, he said, start with a seed and imagine the seed growing into a flower. And then when you've reached the flower, then go back and see it turning back into a seed and go back and forth, because they're both the same thing at different stages of revelation.
Yeah.
And often when I see a new rose appear in the garden here at Meditation Mount, it's got a lovely fragrance and it's beautifully formed. I'll take a photograph of it.
Yeah.
2 days later, it's looking a little withered. And then a week later, it's finished. And I go, well, oh, no. It's celebrated through its beauty, and all forms are temporal.
Yeah.
But its beauty is eternal. So guess what? Another rose comes up, another bud on the bush.
That's right.
So he knows that wiser eyes than his see the end from the beginning, that insight deeper and more loving than his is weighing up the fruit of service, and that judgment more profound than his is testing the force and extent of the vibration set up, and is adjusting that force according to the motive. So he's basically saying, look, there are not people checking up and doing quality control, but there are wiser people who know the good work we've done. And if we haven't quite done it in a way that is the most helpful, they'll make adjustments. We've done the best we could.
Yeah. I also really like how the vibration lines up too with what we're knowing from more and more the wave functions and things like that. And there's a kind of a thing in the music world and backstage, just feeling the vibe. Sometimes you can just feel the vibe of a thing or a place or a system or a movement, and you can see where it's going to end up or it's not. And then that's a skill that you can't really teach,
right.
And that's kind of what he's saying here. Some people can just see they know how this is going to play out, and you should cultivate that in yourself, of being able to see where, I see, like it's if you're out surfing, okay, not that wave, catch the next one.
I've got a feeling.
Yeah.
So he does not suffer from pride over what he has done, nor from undue depression over lack of accomplishment. So don't get down on yourself because you haven't lived up to what the image is of what you thought you had to. Do the best you can.
And also, that's a little twist on does not suffer from pride. That's a bit of a twist. Like you don't realize, oh wow, that's actually an ailment, not a. Because we really like to think about pride in the American culture. We have a very pride. Where I'm proud of this. I'm proud of being American. I'm proud of anything. I'm proud of. You don't realize sometimes that can be an ailment. But
if pride means that that's the most important thing of the whole thing. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I also find if it's something, it's something that's like immutable or something that you didn't choose or you didn't actually do yourself. So it's like, okay, well, I mean, you didn't choose. I mean, maybe in an esoteric sense, you might have chosen where you were born, but not really.
I can see, Joey, that being proud, that means you feel good about what you've done.
Yeah.
But the proud then takes it into another level of self-exaltation. Yeah. I remember my mother always saying to me, Michael, pride comes before a fall.
I think the better way is like there's a certain satisfaction with the job well done, and then you move on to the next
it's
thing.
job satisfaction.
Yeah. Yeah, like you put in the work, and you did the thing, and there's a sense of satisfaction, fulfillment, completion. All those things are very important, but don't linger too much on it.
So let's continue this the paragraph, because it's all about our attitude.
Okay.
At all times he does his very best and wastes not time in backward contemplation, but steadily presses forward to the accomplishment of the next duty. I also believe it's good just to take a breath, that you look at what you've learned, you celebrate it, and then you think about, okay, what have I learned that I'm going to carry forward? So you're mindful of what you're carrying forward. It's just working with the seasons. It isn't like you rush from one thing to another.
Yeah.
It just means you don't get stuck on, what I've just done. Let me bask in the glory of this for a while because it feels good.
Yeah.
Brooding over past deeds and casting the mind back over old achievement is in the nature of involution, and the servant seeks to work with the law of evolution.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So involution is when spirit needed to enter matter.
Okay.
It's when the forces of darkness and forces of gravity helped spirit enter this dense realm of time, space, and substance. We are on the evolutionary now. It's like, okay, we've got some treasures to take back home, and we're on the evolutionary path. The evolutionary path is constantly on an upward spiral.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Oof.
don't get caught up in just going round and round in circles of thinking how, wow, I really did well. And then your whole future is about telling people about what you achieved in the past.
Yeah. 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 You can dine out on that story for a long time, but you're not creating any new stories. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's see what else the Tibetan has to say. So he talks about the servant seeks to work with the law of evolution. This is an important thing to note. The wise server, after action, pays no attention to what his fellow servants say, provided his superiors, either incarnating men or women or the great ones themselves, prove content and silent. He cares not if the result is not that which he anticipated, provided that he faithfully did the highest thing he knew. He cares not if reproach and reproof assail him, provided his inner self remains calm and non-accusing. He cares not if he loses friends, relatives, children, the popularity once enjoyed, and the approbation of his environing associates, provided his inner sense of contact with those who guide and lead remains unbroken. He cares not if he seems to work in the dark, and is conscious of little result from his labors, provided the inner light increases, and his conscience has naught to say. Now, this is taken from Letters on Occult Meditation, which, if I remember rightly, was written back in 1919. I mean, it's one of the early books. So this is some old way of speaking about it, but speaking about an eternal truth. What I find different here, it doesn't mean you're not open to feedback from peers and reflection, but he's basically saying, if I'm criticized if somebody criticizes me now for something, I say, well, what truth is there in what they're saying? And I do a sort of a scan and say, okay, what do I need to look at possibly that they're pointing out that I don't see? But if it's criticism because they don't like me or don't like the way I operate, I let it go, because that's not the deep connection and relationship I have with that fellow human being. That's just two patterns chatting with each other.
Yeah. It sure is. I like that, two patterns chatting. It's like it's like having two records playing right next to each other. That dissonance.
This is not a recording.
Yeah.
A recording. A recording.
Yeah.
A recording.
Yeah.
So this is a juicy paragraph.
It sure is. It's you have to have the strength of character and resolve. It's also kind of heavy-handed. Saying, if you're truly on your mission, you can't be bothered by upsetting everyone around you, losing family and friends. That's kind of heavy-handed.
But it doesn't mean you don't care.
Right. Yeah.
And this, I've bumped into this as well. People say, well, so this has priority over me? The work you're doing has priority over this? And I'm going, from the soul's perspective, yeah. But I still love you. It's like, it's a difficult one, because it sounds as though you've got to give everything away and be cold and callous. No. You respond to the call of life. If you respond to the call of life accurately, it can't harm. Because it comes from a place of harmlessness, even though it may seem that you are distancing yourself from someone, or somebody feels left out of your life or whatever. In the end, if your intent is pure, not to cut yourself off, but to respond to the call of life, you do it in the best way possible. In the end, there will be resolution. But if I'm worried about, well, what will other people think about what I'm doing, it may it may stop me from doing what I'm called to do. That doesn't mean that I don't look at the consequences of my actions, but I evaluate them from a different place, a different interior space.
Right. And then those that are called to serve, it's a vocation in the same way that you might be called to be a high level athlete or a high level politician or a high level, anything when you are called to a specific vocation. It's like when there's a bit of honesty to it when you realize, okay, this is the thing that I've committed myself to. That doesn't mean you can't come along for the ride, but this is what I'm committed to.
Right.
Yeah.
So then there's, a lot of these sentences are just different ways of saying the same thing.
Sure.
So let's move to another one here that gives us a slightly different angle. You must see to it that your attitude towards all teaching is that of willing service with no thought of self. The growth in spiritual realization and the lifting of humanity is that which is of moment and not your own personal growth or development, your own satisfaction at receiving special and new information. So here we go, is that enlightenment, wisdom, is a result of serving. It's not the goal.
Right.
To become enlightened.
Yeah.
Because it means the aggrandizing of the self. But if my goal is to serve, I gain wisdom and power in order to be of service. And when I gain wisdom and power and have these great aha moments, I find that I am now in a more expanded state of being as a result of service.
Yeah.
As the Tibetan says, service is the greatest healer and teacher.
Yeah, it certainly is.
And we should probably mention this, but in other parts of the writings of the Tibetan, he said that the life of an aspirant, a seeker, a spiritual journey person, is split up into these three parts. There are three aspects to the rhythm of the life of a server: meditation, study, service.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't go out and watch a concert or do something and have fun and go for a walk. It just means that these are the three things you focus on. Meditation, to make sure you're always online and you don't miss the call.
That's right.
Study, that you are broadening your ability to perceive and receive. And then, service, which is why we're incarnated. We're not incarnated in order to survive. We're incarnated in order to help build. Remember, we're the project workers.
That's right.
We're construction workers. God's construction workers.
Yeah. And energy follows thought. And we're creating those thought forms. I like that, how that all comes together.
Yeah. So, God, there's so much more in this. You will grow, and your soul will take increasing hold upon its instrument when your mind and effort are turned towards group service, and when your tongue is rendered harmless through the inflow of love. Oh, God, that's a huge message he's just delivered in a sentence.
Yeah, there's a lot to ponder on that one.
I mean, he's just given us the crown jewels there. So he's saying you will, and he's italicized will. You will grow. Don't worry, you will grow, and your soul will take increasing hold upon its instrument when your mind and effort are turned towards group service.
Yeah.
And when your tongue is rendered harmless through the inflow of love. What does that do to you, that when you hear that?
I mean, that is sort of encapsulating his entire philosophy in that one sentence. I mean, because, on one hand, you're saying when you are a seeker and you're on this path, and then it's almost like saying, okay, well, stop seeking now and just get back to work, and then you realize through the work that your capacity grows. And in that capacity, you learn to temper your tongue, and only let in what is love, what is compassionate and loving. And then with that, that starts to grow too. And it's this, in experiencing this service, in like being kind and doing no harm, is a form of service as well.
Right.
You know.
In fact, I'd like to add to what you've just said by quoting another paragraph. He said, "Service is a soul instinct.
Mm-hmm.
It is the outstanding characteristic of the soul, just as desire is the outstanding characteristic of the lower nature. It is group desire, just as in the lower nature it is personality desire. It is the urge to group good. It cannot therefore be taught or imposed upon a person as a desirable evidence of aspiration functioning from without and based upon a theory of service. It is simply the first real effect evidenced upon the physical plane of the fact that the soul is beginning to express itself in outer manifestation." So when the call to service happens, it's the first engagement.
Okay.
The soul's just had its first engagement on the conscious engagement on the planet.
Yeah.
Through your personality, because your personality is not just running around to take care of itself and to find happiness. You're finding joy through service.
Yeah. Yeah. This is also not the first time about expressing how the soul fully taking control, or fully enveloping or fully manifesting itself in the physical form, and that in service, that's where this kind of flower, fully blooms.
Right, and he actually expands on this in another sentence here. If care over the essential of service, soul contact, is taken, then the service rendered will flow with spontaneity along the right lines and bear much fruit. Of this, the selfless service and the deep flow of spiritual life, which have been demonstrated in the world work of late, is a hopeful indication. It's just what you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I like the way he then sort of just says, yeah, but here's something to watch out for. This is a watch out for paragraph now.
Right.
There are those who have so much theory about service and its expression that they fail to serve and also fail to comprehend with understanding the period of pain which ever precedes enlarged service. Wow. The period of pain. Well, it's like growing pains.
Yeah.
Because period of pain is when old things are broken and new things emerge, so you can be of greater service. And so it is a letting go. It's a shedding of something. And if we're still attached to it, it can be a painful process of letting go. And for me, it's spiritual growing pains.
Yeah. I really like this, the first line of the section too, because how could he have foreseen the sort of, I think of the YouTube tutorial. I mean, you want any kind of anything, you can look it up on YouTube, and there's so much theory about how to get things done, and you can usually tell, like, the longer the video is, the more theory you're going to get, and less actual application. So it is interesting how it predicts sort of where the current state.
Yeah, and then he ends this particular paragraph talking about those who know a lot about service intellectually, but fail to serve. Their theories block the way to true expression and shut the door on real comprehension. The mind element is too active.
Yeah,
you can overuse a tool. Tools are to be used when they're needed.
Yeah.
But when the tool becomes the craftsperson.
Yeah.
I am a hammer. Everything I see is a nail. Therefore, I hit it.
Yeah.
That classic thing. And then he asked the question here, and this may be a good one just to go into, and we may find ourselves wrapping up on this one, but he asked the question, what effect does service have upon the mind, the emotions, and the etheric body?
This is a good question.
So and this is the explanation he gives to his own question.
Mhm.
Service itself is definitely the result of a tremendous inner happening. It's like this build-up, and something bursts, the dam bursts, something bursts, and suddenly, I want to love, I want to be of service, I feel alive.
Mhm.
And it's built up. So service itself is definitely the result of a tremendous inner happening. And when that result is brought about, it will be found to have produced a number of creative secondary causes. These are primarily a change in the lower consciousness, a tendency to turn away from the things of the personal self to the larger issues of the group, a reorientation which is real and expressive, and a power to change conditions, and then in parenthesis, through creative activity, which is the demonstration of something dynamically new.
Mm.
So this goes back to what we've touched on some podcasts ago, that you can be reactive and to things that are happening in the world, but then you get to a point where you can actually become causal.
Right. Yeah. And especially in the sense of the group dynamics here, it's kind of like when you find in sports, you can see this when a coach can put together a team where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Right.
You know, it's like you're able to create something new dynamically through your service.
Right. The first effect of the inflowing force of the soul, which is the major factor leading to demonstrated service, is to integrate the personality and to bring all the three lower aspects of the person into one serving whole. And we've always gone back to this, is that the power of the soul really flows in after this first fusion, this fusion of the soul and personality. We call it the integrated and aligned soul personality.
Mm.
So when you've brought these two together and they can dance together and they can serve together, then that's when the energy flows. That's when the power to be of service flows. Before, there was the desire to be of service. Now, when you've got all these things, you've got the power to be of service.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to where he's talking about like all the theories. People have a desire to do something, but it's much different when you've already got your hands dirty. You're out there physically digging in the mud and planting these plants. It's a difference.
And he said this is a difficult and elementary stage from the angle of the student in the hall of wisdom.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is so you've just entered the Hall of Wisdom. Then, like you're new to the Hall of Wisdom.
Yeah,
so
you've come out of the Hall of Learning, into the Hall of Wisdom.
Right.
From the Hall of Ignorance into the Hall of Learning, into the Hall of Wisdom.
Right. So you get to start all over again in the terms of the learning process. You don't.
But it's not. Yeah. But it's at the higher turn of the spiral.
Sure.
Remember, it's always a spiral evolution.
Yeah.
So you're not back where you started.
Mm-hmm. No, but you're just.
So it says, the person becomes aware of their power and capacity, and having pledged themselves to service, begins furiously to serve. He creates this and that and the other channel for the expression of the force which is driving him. He tears down and destroys just as fast as he creates. He temporarily becomes a serious problem to the other servers with whom he may be associated, for he sees no vision but his own. And the aura of criticism which surrounds him and the strenuous push of the assertive force within him produces the stumbling of the little ones, as it's called esoterically. And there has to be constant repair work undertaken on his behalf by older, more experienced disciples. He becomes the victim, for the time, of his own aspiration to serve and of the force which is flowing through him. This stage will in some cases fan into flame the latent seeds of ambition. And then we can go into ambition. But this is an interesting...
Yeah, this is very interesting.
Yeah, what do you get out of this one, Joey?
Well, this is almost on the level of like a Greek tragedy, Greek plays, man versus man versus God, man versus himself, It's this playing out of this constant pattern of, okay, so the aspirant or the star of the show, or fly too high too close to the sun. It's like this. It's this story that's like timeless.
And it's basically, look at me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come back to Laurence Olivier.
Yeah.
Look at me.
Yeah. But it is interesting how, in this case, though, that there is not only are they expected to do this, they're ready for it, and there's a cleanup crew that's there, and almost like in order to go through this, you have to go through this at some point in time, so that you can kind of see the folly of your. The only way to move from unskilled to skilled is to do some unskilled things and learn from them.
Exactly. Yeah. So enthusiasm is wonderful. Enthusiasm means to be filled with the Spirit of God. Mm-hmm. You're enthused.
Right.
But then do you have the skill and the wisdom to serve so that it causes no harm, that it doesn't have to have a repair job done to it? But that's why we're here. We're helping each other learn, not just to pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
But this is a group learning effort. It is a group endeavor, a pathway of group endeavor, which is one of the pathways that we work with here at the Mount.
Yeah, that's absolutely infused in this, because it's from the group perspective of they're almost sort of sandboxing the new entry into the Hall of Wisdom for a minute,
Right. It's like, so make sure you can do no further harm.
Exactly.
So it's the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
That's right.
Something like that. So what else does the Tibetan master say? He says this. This ambition is, in the last analysis, only the personality urge toward betterment, and in its right place and time is a divine asset. But it has to be rooted out when the personality becomes the instrument of the soul. So it leads us to a point where we suddenly meet the soul. But once we've got a relationship with the soul, ambition has to go.
Right.
Because it's a lower form of this desire to be at one and to better ourselves. Mm-hmm. And often better ourselves means to be better than other people. It's always comparative.
Mm-hmm. Sure is.
Rather than betterment is continually evolve and grow my capacity to be of service. Mm-hmm. That really is true betterment, rather than I'm better than you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of that ambition can be this, thing that gets you going. Maybe you want, like if you imagine you just start playing an instrument and your ambition is just to get really good at this instrument. And then once you're really good, then you start looking out to, so you're comparing yourself to others. And that can't be the ambition to outplay somebody else. It has to be to grow your own expression,
Yeah. No, I've had that experience the last couple of years where I with the guitar. My ambition was to be able to play without looking and thinking. Mm-hmm. Just to play what's inside my heart, and it comes out through my fingers and through the instrument.
Yeah.
And then you go on YouTube and you see some other guitarists and you go, oh. Yeah. But then you go back to, no, at least I'm able to give expression to what's inside of me, the joy, the beauty inside of me. And that for me is good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the key. That's what you got. Exactly. That's exactly how it works.
Okay. So in other cases, the server will come into a wider and more loving vision, and taking his eyes off his own accomplishment, will go to work in silent unison with the groups of all true servers. So this is where you realize it isn't about, the spotlight constantly being on me. You suddenly realize, oh, I actually can help. Mm-hmm. And then silently you join in with this great movement, this great soul movement being enacted through all these different points of anchoring, which are the people, the personalities,
right,
the project guys.
Yeah, it's a symphony.
It's a symphony.
Yeah.
He will submerge his personality, tendencies, his ideas, and his ambitions into the greater good of the whole, and self will be lost to sight. That means the need to be self-referencing will no longer be prominent. We've said before that as you grow and give and serve, your sense of self expands. Mm-hmm. You don't ever lose yourself, but what you lose is the self with a small s, the me.
Yeah. This is an important part. And this might also be kind of a good place to start, kind of maybe wrapping up this one. But, so interesting how there's such a focus right now on the individual personality in every kind of way, expressing your, whether it's on social media or like whether how you dress, and it's all beautiful and wonderful. Everyone's expressing, but in the same time, like we're also more interconnected and starting to see that we're part of a bigger whole.
And then when we follow fashion, we dress according to what is dictated as the thing to wear. But when the soul governs, we wear the colors of the soul. We wear the shape of the soul. We wear the substance of the qualities of the soul.
Yeah.
That's our garment. And we're not dictated to by fashion. We fashion our lives according to the soul.
That's right.
That's the only fashioning that happens.
Yeah.
The fashioning of the soul of its instrument.
Yeah. Wow.
So my sense is we can read a couple of more paragraphs,
Sure, of
and
course.
that may wrap this up, because we don't want to overdo this thing about service.
That's true.
We want to get on and serve, not just talk about service.
Right. No, it's not all theory. You have to get out there and get practice.
Yes, exactly. So he gives us a little hints here. So DK says, let simplicity be your guide and one-pointed love your major objective. Choose a field of service which has its definite limits, for all disciples are limited and cannot cover a planetary range in their thoughts and work mentally and physically within those limits. He's basically saying, don't carve out too big a sphere. Carve out a space that you can really fill it with who you are. However, since this was written, we can reach out and touch the planet. I'm on several project teams that have people from Australasia, South America, Europe, North America, and we just meet and think nothing of it.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So in that respect, but he's not talking about don't go planetary. He says, don't get ahead of yourself. Don't spread yourself thin.
Right.
Because one of the rules of white magic is a magician dispels not their forces or scatters not their forces. So when you work with energy, you have to keep it focused. You have to keep it coherent because energy follows thought. So you want a coherent focus, just like a magnifying glass and the sun brings it to a burning point. So when you are focused, so you have your sphere of influence. It's called a ring pass knot in the wisdom teaching. In fact, every act of creation is an act of limitation, because you mentioned before about a new canvas, a white canvas. So when you have a canvas and say it's like 1 meter by 2 meters or whatever the thing, 6 feet by 3 feet or whatever the canvas is, and you're going to paint a picture of the world on it. Well, the world is bigger than that, but what you're doing is you're taking a microcosm and representing the macrocosm in the microcosm. So every act of creation is a limited expression of something greater.
I really like that, because when you think about it just on a practical sense, once you've put in the first brushstroke on, you're now limited what else you can put on there. That can no longer be a blank canvas.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I want to paint the universe, how can I contain the universe in a canvas in my room, in my studio? Well, you can. Because you focus it, you bring it down into the microcosm.
Yeah.
And the relationship between the microcosm and the macrocosm exists. It's a fractal.
Right.
We go back to each one of us is a fractal of the one life. So get on with your fractals. Be the best fractal you can.
Fractal rock. Yeah. Like it.
Oh, gosh. So let's take a couple more.
Okay.
So it says, the completion of some self-appointed task within the field of karmic limitation and environment where your destiny has cast you is all that's required of you. Basically saying respond to the core. Because some people say, well, I want to change the world, and they try and go out and do great things, but they don't have the capacity to focus in a greater area. So they disperse their energies and the thing just bursts like a bubble.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean if you're called to planetary work and you can do it, you've got to do it.
That's right.
It's basically do what you're called to do and don't have grander ambitions based on what your personality would like others to see you doing or you to be seen doing.
Yeah.
So what are you accomplishing really at this time? Let your service lie within the field of contact where you find yourself. So he's basically saying, be where you are. Be here and now. Carry it out to completion in the place where you are and with your chosen friends, your chosen co-workers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So love the one you're with.
That really does resonate with me.
Yeah. Let humanity constitute your field of service, and may it be said of you that you knew the spiritual facts and were a dynamic part of these spiritual events. May it not be said of you that you knew those things and did nothing about them and failed to exert yourself. Let not time slip by as you work. So this goes back to the thing is, once you become aware, you've got to act upon that awareness.
Right. Yeah. It kind of wraps in with that theory too. It's not enough to just have some theories and know some things. You got to actually, be of service and be at work with that.
Well, the awareness wasn't given to you so you could be seen to be a brighter bulb.
Right.
It was so that you could carry out more work.
Yeah.
And we've often sort of jokingly said that initiation is simply a greater capacity to carry out the will of God. Therefore, the more you serve, the more work you're given.
Yeah.
It isn't like you come to the end of your to-do list and that's it. You can kick back.
Right. Yeah, it's like sort of taking a dividend instead of reinvesting it.
Yeah, exactly, Joy. Then it says, work not under strain or with effort. Bring ease and effortless expression into your daily relations. Conservation of energy and increased inner work will produce a greater magnetic realization, but less physical plane activity. This is why when the work is turbocharged with this really powerful inner awareness, inner focus, inner knowing, otherwise you're just trying to generate stuff from the outside. Like I'm pedaling as fast as I can.
Yeah.
Work more in the light and see all people as in that light with you. All that any disciple or aspirant has to do in relation to their fellow human beings is to stimulate the light that is in them, leaving them free to walk in their own light and way upon the path. Ooh, basically don't interfere. So service isn't telling another person what they should do. It's not being the missionary. We go back to that. One of the downsides of the devotional Piscean age was that we had the uprising of the missionaries.
Yeah.
Where in order to save somebody's soul, you had to convince them to believe a particular creed, no matter what that creed was, rather than awaken in them the latent, dormant, inherent truth.
Right.
So our mission is to cultivate, stimulate the awakening of the light of love in each person, not to tell them how to believe the light of love.
Yeah. I kind of think of it in musical terms too.
Okay.
You play the first couple of notes and see if they resonate with them, if they play back, instead of saying, this is how this works.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple more sentences to wrap this up, because I think this is the third, and maybe it's a trilogy. Trilogies are great.
Yeah,
I like
it's
trilogies.
good. It's a good round number.
Here's a very powerful, short sentence.
Yeah.
Work is done by action and not by talking. You will ask me, what is your service? That, my friend, will grow out of your meditation. It is not for me to tell you what activity your personality must follow. It is your own soul which must do so.
Yeah. Know thyself.
In our work, there is no great or little task, only obedience to the next duty, whatever that may be. I don't want to do that because it's not good enough, it's not big enough, or I want to do something that, really catches people's attention.
Yeah.
No, I want to do that which I'm called to do.
That's right.
And then finally, this is the last one in the compilation. The problem of all disciples today is to achieve successful activity in their chosen task of competent citizenship and life occupation, and yet at the same time, to add to that at any cost a practical life of service.
Ooh.
See, a practical life of service, going back, well, why are we incarnated? We're incarnated because we've got to produce the results. We've got some deliverables. And the deliverables is the light that lives within matter. We're being asked to call it forth.
Yeah.
We are being asked to call the light of love that lives in each soul, call it forth. But we don't have to get people to believe in what we think it is. We're here to call forth that which lives at the heart of everything. Whether it be the heart of an atom, the heart of a human, the heart of the planet. If we're of planetary service in the end, Joey, I believe we're here to serve the evolving life of this planet, which is one from, lead me from darkness into light and from death to immortality. This is the journey we're on of ever increasing stages of expression of the inner truth, goodness, and beauty that lies at the heart of all things. So when you talk about service, it is about serving other humans. But in doing that, we are actually part of the evolution of the planetary life itself. That's what it means to be a planetary server, not you jet set and do things.
Yeah.
That's how I hold it.
I love that.
What are some final thoughts that you have on service?
Well, one of the things that, and this is not pride, but this is one of the things that I loved about going through this service section is that this is something that we were actually living here at Meditation Mount. And I know how much work you've actually put in over the years and it's been a slog sometimes, but it's not glamorous. Like it's not always the victory lap you want to take to try to do things in the right kind of way. And that's something that we have been doing here. And like, it's really, these principles really resonated. And it's like the longer I've spent here, the more time I've spent here, you see that you have to, you kind of have to be of service in this kind of group endeavor if you want it to work.
Stay the course.
You really do. You really.
I think I don't know the exact quote. It's a Rudyard Kipling quote over the door of the players' dressing room at Wimbledon tennis.
Oh.
Yeah. It's about victory and loss, or victory and failure, how to see these two imposters for what they are.
Yeah. Well, I like that in the mixed martial arts world, there's like you win or you learn, Right. So,
there are no losers.
Yeah.
There are people who forget why they're here and why they're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess really the way I want to complete this trilogy with you, Joey, is just to say, may all of us respond to the call of the soul, which is to be of service, because without us responding to the call of the soul, the planet itself cannot give birth to the great beauty that lives inside it. It cannot fulfill its destiny as a planetary being within the solar family. So this is a family constellation we're dealing with, but it's a solar constellation of lives. So that's where whatever we do in a small way each day is connected with the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So service is how we participate in the evolving life of our planet, of our solar system, however we want to say it, but at least our community. So thank you. This is, we're using text that was written, as we say, 50, 60, 70 years ago. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we've been able to draw out some parallels and some ways of looking at it now that are useful to people, because otherwise you could say, well, that was great 60 years ago, but when I wake up each day, what do I do about this now in today's world? Because it's different. Well, it's different to some degree on the outside. Things are speeded up, as you always remind us. Things have telescoped. Mm-hmm. It's focused. But the basic truth is the same. When the soul wakes up, all it seeks to do is to give of its light and warmth, to give of its love in service. So
All right.
thank you, Joey.
Hey, Michael, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
All right.